Hi, today we're looking at 7 swans are swimming. See you in a minute. Now today's journey into Wikipedia and Google starts with swans, members of the genus Cygnus, which, like me, I hope, mate for life, or at least 45 years so far anyway. It took me to the constellation of Cygnus in the Milky Way, and Greek mythology, which has Nemesis trying to escape from Zeus by turning into a goose, and he in turn turned into a swan and won her love. The constellation of Cygnus was then formed to celebrate the result of this union, and it was the word nemesis that hit me on that one. Now we all know that my nemesis is water, and there is a water connection here. I found in amongst the searches the Severn Swan, which is a 67-foot schooner that was being rebuilt that used to ply up and down the River Severn. Took me full circle back to Severn, or Severn, depending on how you spell it. Source of the River Severn is Plinlimmon in Wales, highest point in the Cambrian Mountains, and that's something that I climbed in with full kit in my army cadet days in 1965 in one Easter in the snow at almost horizontal, lashing across at us, so that spurred some sort of a thought process as well. So it seemed that Severn kept coming back on this. The River Severn that I'd climbed to the source of. The river I've lived near for 45 years, and my nemesis water. Also of significance and relevance was the fact that I'm a member of the Severn Valley Railway. So Severn seems to have been where this whole thing has gone. Now, my first car was rebuilt from the ground up by my dad when I was a child. It's a 1930 Austin 7 convertible, and this was been early 60s, and I used to go out to the garage most nights and watch him painstakingly working on this and putting it all back together. And I think it was there that I picked up my love for making things. It also saw me learn to drive, start out my working life, take out my girlfriend, now wife, and so much more. So it really had to be an Austin 7 chummy that was the build for this week. Now the kit came through the post in a quite nicely wrapped up box. It's a white metal kit, and the white metal is essentially slightly harder and higher melting point than solder, but not much. So whilst you can solder them together, there is quite a risk of the whole thing disintegrating when you touch it with a soldering iron. So in this instance, given that there's very little of it to attach to one another, very few of the pieces to attach to one another, I'll probably be using super glue on it. If nothing else, it enables you to paint the component parts before you assemble it, rather than try to mask out and spray it afterwards. First job really is to just go through the castings and clear all the flash off them that comes out of the mouldings if you're not careful, the rough edges. I'm changing the headlamp position because in 2930 I think it moved from the scuttle down to the front mud guards, and ours was a 1930 chummy, so that was what I wanted to change. Gave them both, all the component parts, a spray with an etch primer in grey, then painted the body with a coat of white primer because it's going to be a very light pale yellow colour. Now I've mixed up a brew of paint which is pretty much as near as I can remember it, the original colour of our old Austin 7. It was a primrose yellow colour, and I'm just going to brush paint that on rather than get an airbrush out to do it all just for that little bit. There's not a lot to do, it's just mainly the body itself. Everything else was black, and I've sprayed that with a spray can. This has just had a coat of primer, like an etch primer, and then we have the yellow that was the car I remember so much and so well. Might need a couple of coats, but it's easier to put 2 thin coats on and get a decent finish. That's it. Simple enough job. Once the body was dry, I've basically then assembled it using the super glue. The radiator grille is chrome, well, was nickel plated, not chrome, but I've just polished up the white metal on that because you can't actually get a decent chrome plate paint, but it looks pretty much there. And essentially it's just a matter of gluing the few component parts together. Wheels were the most fiddly bit. They're very nice because they're etched nickel silver parts, 2 parts to the wheel, one either side of the tyre, with a little hub, but they are quite difficult to assemble. But those were just glued together and stuck onto the axles, and the spare wheels stuck on the back, and at that point it's pretty much complete. There's very little actual assembly on the kit. You know, 2 seats, 2 components for the back seat, a hood, windscreen, chassis, and that's pretty much it. And there's just a couple of shots of the finished article. Now this build wasn't about learning things. The internet journey was fairly short. It was more about going back to my youth, finding the source of the need to make things, and probably most importantly meeting my wife. It's been an emotional trip, and on this New Year's Day it's been a wonderful trip down memory lane. Time to look forward now, and I wish you all a happy and prosperous new year, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye!